There is a secret that most pro athletes, elite CEOs, and high performers all know. They all have a group of world-class coaches working for them to help them optimize their potential. At Super Athlete Radio, our goal is to provide you with the caliber of world-class coaches and guests to help you unlock your potential, dominate your industry, and dominate your life. Let's get better today. And I'm really excited to bring on business athlete Eric Spofford on to Super Athlete Radio today. Eric, thank you so much for coming on. How are you?
Happy to be. I'm very good. Very well, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. And there's a ton of stuff I want to get into with you today, but just your whole story of turning pain into purpose is absolutely beautiful and inspiring. And I'd love just if you could start there in terms of how you kind of started from where you were to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, for all the listeners, anyone that's not familiar with me, you can find me at Eric Spofford on Instagram as my native platform. My story is this. I grew up outside of Boston. You know, my childhood wasn't a horrible one, but it wasn't a great one either. My parents went through a divorce when I was real young, and, you know, it was what it was. But what happened parallel to that is I started dabbling, like many kids do, with drugs and alcohol at a very young age. And that escalated very quickly for me. And so it was really two things. It was crime and this street life, and then parallel to it, it was my own addiction and drug use. And so I got caught selling drugs, selling weed at about 10, 11 years old, which is incredibly young to be doing that. I was in 5th grade at North Salem Elementary School, you know, listening to Tupac, Me Against the World on my Discman, you know, just thinking I was a little thug, a little gangster at 10 years old, little punk.
It sounds like you were playing the part pretty well.
What's that?
I said it sounds like you weren't just thinking, like you're playing the part pretty well.
No, I mean, I was dead serious about it. You know what I mean? I was all in from a very young age. You know, at 14 years old, I try a bunch of different drugs. I'm experimenting, I'm partying, I'm drinking, I'm doing ecstasy, I'm doing Special K, I'm doing coke. And then a kid that I grew up with pulls up to my house with his girlfriend with a 40 milligram Oxycontin. It's 1999, and the opioid epidemic in America is being born. It's in its infancy stages, and nobody knows it yet. And he crushes this 40 milligram Oxycontin up on literally the Eminem Slim Shady LP CD case. Remember it like it was yesterday. And we split it into lines. I sniffed a line of that OC, and I got high in a way that nothing else got me high. And for me, what happened in that moment was I had found like what they call your drug of choice. I think a more accurate description of that is your drug of no choice. It's the thing that I lost all control to. I started using it every day. 6 months into it, I was like, you know, let me pump the brakes and let, you know, I've been using Oxycontin every single day for a long time now. Let me take a break. And so I'm sitting in my dad's house, and, you know, it's probably like day 2, and I have the flu, and I'm sick. And my friend Dominic, God rest his soul, he passed away. He died of an overdose when he got out of prison for like the 4th or 5th time, maybe 10 years ago. But he came to my house, and we were talking, and I was like, yeah, bro, I got the flu and all this stuff. He was like, man, when's the last time you did an OC? I was like, oh, it's been like almost 2 days. He goes, bro, you don't have the flu, you're dope sick. This is a pivotal moment in my life. I said, what's dope sick? Says, man, and he explains to me that opiates, this drug class like Oxycontin, heroin, creates a physical dependency in the absence of having it, right? When you don't have it, you go into withdrawal symptoms, and it makes you very ill. He busted out a line. I did the line. I immediately felt better. And in that moment, I was 15 years old, and I was like, oh, I'm addicted. Got it. That thing shortly thereafter turned into heroin addiction. A girl, love of my life growing up. We had this Bonnie and Clyde type relationship. Her name was Tanita. Beautiful white girl with long blonde hair. Tougher than most men you know, but like 130 pounds, gorgeous. And me and her ended up trying heroin together, her first, then me. She ended up dying as well. And she's been gone for, I don't even know.
Was she the one playing the song in that video, in the hour-long Your Story video?
You did your research.
Yeah.
She is, yeah. That's her. And we tried heroin, tried IV shooting heroin for the first time at 15 years old. And that turned into, from that point, 6, almost 7 years of just straight up hardcore addiction. I dropped out of high school, ran the streets, I sold drugs, I committed crimes, was in, violence, just drug dealing, it was insanity. I mean, it was like movie grade. Like if I started telling stories from that time, it was just crazy. And I actually had no intention on living very long. Like I got to this very dark place where I was like this street guy, drug addict, like accepted my own fate that I'm probably going to go to prison or I'm going to die by the time I'm like 21. And that's not what happened, thank God. It's what happened for most of the people that I was with at the time. Most of them did not make it out. I'm one of the very few survivors of this generation and what happened to us in this opioid epidemic. And so fast forward 100 tried and failed attempts at sobriety, going to rehabs, going to detoxes, going to 12-step meetings, going to all sorts of different stuff that I tried to try to change my life. How many times that I woke up and said, today's the day, I'm never going to use again. I'm going to kick it. I'm going to kick it for good. And then, days, weeks, or months later, there I was using again, over and over and over for like 5 years. And then December 7th, 2006 came, and the day before that is a very dramatic turn of events, which I often walk people through the timeline of the 24 hours that precipitated my final decision and movement to get sober, and I've been sober since. And it sounds very dramatic. The crazy thing is it was like everyday life, honestly. And so I had just gotten out of jail again. I had robbed these 2 drug dealers, Jason and Rainey. They were South Florida pill mill hustlers. They would fly down here to Florida, do these pain clinics and these pill mills and bring back Oxycontin and other drugs, prescription drugs, up in the Northeast. And so I robbed both of them, gone to jail, got out. They had kidnapped my dog, and I was rolling around the city on December 6th of 2006 with a 380 caliber handgun and a butcher knife. And I went to both of their houses, kicked their doors in. It was known that I was looking for them because they had robbed my house and kidnapped my dog in retaliation for my robbery, and it was a big mess. Didn't find either one of them, thank God. I think God was really doing for me, what I couldn't have would at the time. But on my way back to the trap house that I was staying at, some kid who knew who I was, I probably met him partying at some point, but I didn't remember him, yelled my name and wanted to buy drugs. And so I said, yeah, sure. I didn't have any drugs. And actually, I was going into that withdrawal again. I was starting to get sick. That's one of the most terrifying things about addiction is you have to constantly feed this dragon.
Feed the dragon, yeah.
You got at all costs, right? And so this kid tells me that he just cashed his check. I'm like, yeah. I set the kid up. We walk around a building kind of in the hood where I was staying at in this city. And as soon as we make it around the corner, I rushed him with the knife. The knife on his throat, I ran his pockets, and I took him for $82. I mean, I wish it was like I took a bank for, 50 grand or something, but I robbed this poor prick for $82. He worked part-time at Mobil, the gas station, and he just cashed his check. Took the $82, bought 4 $20 bags of heroin, shot him in a closet, literally hiding in a closet on the 3rd floor of an apartment building in a trap house. It was the last time, God willing, that I ever used drugs or alcohol, any mind-altering substance. The entire neighborhood was shut down, flooded with cops. I thought the gig was up. I thought I was going to prison that day. And the state that I was in has incredibly strong laws and sentencing guidelines, unlike some others. And so if I had gotten caught at that moment, in my head, what I was thinking was like, I'm going to prison for 15 to 30. Like, this is a serious deal. Armed robbery.
Yeah.
I knew that I'd cut his throat in the struggle. I saw a little scratch. And so I got on my knees in the closet, And I for the first time in a long time, prayed to God. I said, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to get out of this. I can't imagine living my life the way I'm living it anymore. And I can't imagine living it any way but this. I'm lost. I don't know what to do. And I remember specifically asking God for help. And I think there's a lot of power in that, because you can pray to God, but you have to give God isn't rude. God's not going to go where he's not invited. And so I had to give God consent to step into my life.
And if I remember correctly, you mentioned before that if you had anybody else to call, you would have called them first.
Yeah, I would have called them before I called God, for sure. That's very true. Like, why did I get sober? Because I ran out of options. If I had anything left to do, I would have done it. But I was just backed into a corner. The next morning, I went on the run. I took
And then
off.
did you feel like you got some power from that when you did have that conversation with God?
I didn't realize it at the time. I think God stepped in and kind of guided me and put his hand on my shoulder or my back and pushed me in the right ways. And God, I believe, for me, this has been a journey very much about spirituality, about my relationship with God. I make no bones about that, right? That the internal transformation that took the testimony I owe to him, and it would be an injustice to not give him credit that he took me from a junky piece of shit into the man that everyone knows today, right? That's all God. I did the work. I showed up. It's not, God doesn't come down like he's fucking Santa Claus and bang you on the head with a magic wand. Like, there's a lot more to it. And if he did, there'd be a lot more success stories. It's very hard. It's very difficult, but he'll give you what you need. And so he also works through people. This is what I looking back, realized. And so I went on the run. I got to my mom, who I had this really crazy, up and down relationship with my whole life. She let me stay on her couch. I started detoxing on her couch. And the only thing that I knew was to go back to a 12-step meeting. And the rehab scene, like drug rehab, was totally different then. Everything was on like waiting lists. You couldn't just go to rehab. Like, you had to call 3 times a day and wait a month. And people died on those waiting lists back then. It was crazy. But so I got on the waiting list, but I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I just walked to a 12-step meeting, beginning of December in New Hampshire, right? Freezing. I don't have a winter coat. And I'm literally like walking down the street like, fuck, it's this meeting. And I get to the meeting and I walk in, and God, he sent some people for me that I owe my life to. These were men in recovery that they were my first mentors, teachers, sponsors, and people and you know what they did that was instrumental in my life, and relationships like this and men like this have changed my life, and I've had the opportunity to change an unquantifiable amount of people's lives using the same principle. They told me the truth. And they didn't I
love that.
Yeah, they didn't hold back. They honestly cared about me so much and loved me so much that they didn't give a single fuck how I felt. Like, my feelings were never considered one time in this process. And I walked in and they looked at me and just said, kid, you're a mess. Look at you. Look at you. What are you doing? Why don't you come with us? And so they started giving me very basic instructions on things to do and how to live my life and how to be in recovery. And the one thing that I did is when they said to do something, I did it. And then I did the next thing. And then I did the next thing. And before you knew it, my life started to come together. I started to put some weight back on. I was very skinny, malnourished from not eating, from heroin addiction. I started to go to the gym. I got a job. One of the guys at one of the meetings gave me a job in this call center. I think God has a sense of humor too, right? And so here I am, this big bad gangster, right? At one time I was a fucking big drug dealer, big stick-up kid, doing robberies. I got a list of fucking violent events that on my resume, fucking fuck with me, what's up, right? Tough guy, fuck you up. And this guy at this meeting's like, hey, why don't you come down on Monday, I'll give you a job. I said, all right. So what is it? It's a call center, just come down. And so I go in, and he gives me $200 a week and this commission plan to work the phones, right? I'm like 10 days sober, still sick, right? I'm like, still feel like shit. I'm like, oh man. And I'm like, all right, what are we selling? And I don't know if you guys ever get these phone calls, but I always thought it was the police. He says, we're collecting donations for the New Hampshire Police Association. I look around and I'm like, half of this room is on fucking parole. What are you talking about? It's like the police association. So here I am sitting there like kicking drugs, getting sober again on a headset. You're like, hey, Chase, this is Eric from the New Hampshire Police Association. I was like, oh man, this is crazy.
Yeah, the way those call centers work, like the cops didn't even know who was probably working for there. Because I used to work for a bunch of those when I was 18, 19. It's usually like some hustler guy who just gets a contract like that and then just starts finding guys off the street that can start
100%.
making the phone calls.
Yeah, he was a guy from South Boston. He was from Southie.
Yeah.
It's like this Irish mafia figure and a bunch of kids on parole and like newly sober drug addicts in a boiler room working the phones. It was crazy, bro.
That's too funny.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I thought it sucked at the time, but looking back, we actually had a lot of fun. You know, it was good times. One of the things that happened to me in that recovery process, and this is a different day and age, right? I got sober 2006, 2007. And so the first years, like there's no social media, there's no connectivity, like there's no influencers, there's none of this. None of this exists. And so it was very hand-to-hand combat in recovery. It didn't exist online, it existed in person. We went to the meetings every night. We went to Denny's and smoked cigarettes after the meeting. And we did these things, and I had this conversional experience, like a complete and total transformation of my thoughts, ideas, emotions, all of that. Carl Jung talks about this. He says that those things are cast to one side and an entirely new set begins to dominate us. And he describes that as a spiritual experience. And that is exactly what happened to me. Like I talk about this young man that committed atrocious crimes, that used drugs, that broke hearts, that did all these crazy things. It's me. I'm that guy. But I almost feel like I'm speaking about somebody else in third person because that guy died a long time ago. He's been in that process. I died the death of self in order to emerge and become a new person. And that's really what was happening in this time period of my life. As a byproduct of that, I became unbelievably excited and passionate about helping other addicts and alcoholics. And so I started volunteering and sponsoring within the 12-step community and just giving my time for free and for fun, no money, to helping other people, like all of it, like obsessed. And then I had the idea that I saw this landscape of what was going on, and I wanted to open a sober house. And that was the birth of my business. And so in 2008, with under 2 years of sobriety at 23 years old, two things happened. October 2008, I purchased my first real estate deal, and I started my first legitimate business, like an actual LLC with a bank account.
And then keeping up with this theme of turning your pain into your purpose, that business grew. It grew a ton.
Yeah.
And then you also, like 99 is when the opioid epidemic started. So I'm guessing there's a lot of business people that recognized the need for recovery centers and the business opportunity there. But you were able to separate yours from the pack in terms of who kind of won out up there. Is it because, I'm guessing one of the reasons is how much you cared. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think that the fact that the business was led by me, who was incredibly passionate and because of my life experience of being in recovery, gave it a special sauce that a lot of other businesses of its type didn't have. And, you know, it just kind of, some of it was right place, right time, right? Like it was just alignment, right? I got in there. I was one of the first ones in the state to start a business like that. As the problem grew, the business grew, the Affordable Care Act happens, you know, we start to open, you know, inpatient treatment centers that insurance covers, and the growth was explosive. From start to finish, when I sold that business, it was 13 years, 2 months. And it went from me in the beginning with one small little apartment building, 3-unit apartment building, small spot in a town called Derry, New Hampshire. And I had 11 residents, 11 clients that stayed with me, paid by the week. I don't remember what we charged, like $150, $175 a week or something. And it was just me. I mowed the lawn. I did all the property maintenance. I answered the phones. I ran all the groups. I mentored all of these guys. I taught them recovery. I taught them life skills. It was just me and 11 guys, and those were my guys. That was my little pack, my little herd to take care of, right?
That's amazing.
And the business grew, just started growing. And as it grew, the momentum was like a snowball effect. And eventually it just got huge. For me, huge anyway. It was the end profile of the business that I was running for the last X amount of years was 325 employees, 440 treatment beds. And so we did, on average, maybe between, because of the turnover, 450 to 500 admissions a month, which means that we touched 5,000 to 6,000 lives a year of people coming through. It's a lot of people in 12 months. We did
that you're taking in to live there.
Well, we had a collection of facilities, right? Now they're all lived with us. They all slept in our beds, ate our food. You know, they're a 24-hour captive audience. The financial profile of the business was we got to about 55 million a year in top line revenue, and it profited about $1 million a month. So when I sold it off of, I believe, a $13 million TTM, which is trailing 12 months EBITDA, which is earnings.
And then I'd love for you to share your story when, I think it was the second time you were about to sell. You put in all this effort, you put in all this work. You probably started to smell a decent chunk of change a little bit, but when I think it was Vice President Hunter Pence was even coming to as like a political thing for the state of New Hampshire. They were coming to your corporate headquarters. Can you share that story with our audience?
Oh, man. When I tell you my life has been crazy, it's been 10 different lifetimes. That's why it's like just story after story. It was 2019. I had been very politically active. Not because I even care about politics. That's one of the things that got messed up about me at the time was I got painted with this political brush of being a Republican, when really it was just the Republicans that pulled me in. I'm really an independent, you know. So anyways, it was very, very strange. But I ended up getting involved in politics when I didn't even really know much about politics at the time, in about 2014 and 15. In 2015, I was invited by Senator Kelly Ayotte to go to Washington, D.C., and I testified in front of the United States Senate Health Education, Labor, and Pension Committee on the opioid epidemic. And so, like, this was 4 years after I testified to the United States Senate. I'm coming through the airport in Maryland and Baltimore. I get a phone call. I think it's my friend, a former congressman. So I pick up the phone like I would for a buddy. I'm like, what's up? And they're like, we're looking for Eric Spofford. I'm like, yeah, this is him. Who's this? We're calling from the vice president's office. I said, the vice president of what? Like literally like the vice president of what? They're like, America, sir. Vice president of America, Mike Pence. Vice president, President Donald Trump. Have you heard of him? I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, and they asked that Mike Pence wanted to come to my treatment centers. I had this big event center. I used to host big recovery events with 300-400 people in them. And he wanted to come up, and because New Hampshire is a battleground state, first in the primary on elections, politically very important, even though it's a tiny state. They put
and you
a
were
lot
trying
of
to sell the business at the same time.
I have a deal queued up.
Okay.
This is my second time. The first time I went to market, the deal blew up because of an association of mine, of a guy who got in trouble with the law. It was a big crazy story. It was stupid. The second time was this one, which is a much more interesting story. So I have, at the time, I have a deal with a private equity group penned, and we're finishing due diligence. and it's a $50 million valuation. I'm selling 80% of the business. I'm getting a check soon for $40 million. A lot of money, a lot of dough, right? And so I called, they asked, they want to come up, they want to have this event. I call, I'm like, yeah, let me just check. And I call them, I'm like, hey, it sounds crazy, but Vice President Pence wants to come to the place. They're like, great, yeah, sounds wonderful. Dude, I call them, I'm like, yeah, we're on. They're like, great, we'll be there tomorrow to start setting up. And it was like 4 or 5 days away from when they wanted to come. I was like, all right. Dude, they rolled in with like 15 black SUVs, everything you think it would be, plus some. Like,
Yeah.
dude, crazy. Round the clock. Yeah. Secret Service, all sorts of crazy shit. And the day of the event comes, and I got the event center. It doesn't even look the same. It looks like a presidential event center. I don't know how else to say it. Big press box, big wires coming through, going to, you know, they got Fox and CNN and NBS, you know, whatever they are. All, you know, I mean, there's like 150 cameras pointed at the stage. There's a presidential podium. This is interesting. I didn't know this, but when you see the president speak, the seal, the presidential seal on the front of the podium, they don't actually put that on. And the second he enters the building, that goes on the podium, and the second he exits, it comes off.
Like a symbolic thing?
I guess. And so I learned that. That's one thing that did happen. Dude, 30 minutes before he's supposed to walk into the building, the main guy from the White House comes over. He's like, this event's off. Like, what are you talking about? This event's off. There are 300 people out there. Like, everyone, every who's who of all of New England is sitting in this room. They took the entire day to come here, and now you're telling me the event is off? So we're going out on stage, and we're shutting this thing down. Like, all right, he says, there's been an incident. We don't know, you know, whatever it is, don't have any information, but he's not coming. He's returning to the White House. Okay, fine. I go out there, I get up, I thank everyone for coming. I hand it over to him. He gets up, he shuts it down. This is a crazy thing that I've never told in this story because it's just too much. I actually left that. I'm in a gray suit with a red tie, white shirt. I'm driving back. My bell is rung. I'm like, I just feel like a whooped dog, man. And I'm pulling into my neighborhood. And dude, this car, this Honda, like comes flying down the road where I'm taking a left into it. And I like punch it to get out of the way. Dude, he skips over the road, jumps the median, and crashes into a building that's like a landscaping store. And so I jump out and run over there. Long story short, dude, this big guy, like in his 50s, had a heart attack while he was driving. The vice president just blew the whole event up. And on the way home, this guy, you know, has a heart attack in his car, hits his building. I dragged him out of the car, me and this other guy, and start working on him. And the guy fucking dies right in front of us. It was one of the craziest days of my life, dude. This guy's just dead. I'm like sitting there like, it was just wild. 3 weeks goes by, and there's all this speculation. You know, the media wants to know why did the Vice President of America cancel this event, all this stuff. Long story short, I had a guy that was working for me. He had relapsed several years prior to that. He was a former NFL player.
So that adds a little bit of notoriety to it, right?
Right. And he had pain management because he had a fused spine and a titanium knee. Got messed up on the pain management, started doing drugs, ended up helping traffic drugs, got arrested by the DEA in 2017, didn't want to get in trouble, became a federal informant, worked with the DEA on the drug dealers, kept the entire thing a secret, and the DEA, from the best of my knowledge, what happened was the DEA told the Secret Service that the guy that works at that business is a federal informant in a drug case. And so they turned the entire thing around. The press, Politico broke the news first. It was a disaster of press. And the headline was that Mike Pence avoided his trip to New Hampshire to not meet a drug dealer. It was not exactly good for business.
That was the headline.
That was the headline, crazy. Yeah. Not in like local news, like Fox, CNN. Like, it was bad, yeah.
And then you had a mentor come in who, with their expertise and organizational skills, was able to get everything operationally even more in order. You were able to sell it for even higher value. But before there, real quick, I just loved, that's some shit. So like in terms of like adversity and like dealing with that, and then I'm sure you get people all the time reaching out to you. Yeah, I could change, Eric. I could get where I want to go, but I'm dealing with this. Was there like a specific tool?
Oh, they're so weak. That's one of my problems is just people look at me and think that there's been some easy path and they're stopped by some mediocre minor level of adversity. And I'm like, they're just so fucking weak, most of them. And they have no idea. Like if I sat here and broke down the amount of things that I had to overcome, work through, figure out, problem solve, pressure, stress, problems, betrayal, legal problems, lawsuits, just getting your teeth kicked in 1,000 times. That's one of them. Like that's one of them that, stands out. And so what happened with that one is I immediately did that first week, because what the problem was that they were like, me and this guy were kind of close. I had no idea. Like he obviously concealed this as the most well-kept secret of his life. And I had no idea that any of this had gone on with him. And so there was this assumption that maybe I had something to do with it. When you're the CEO of an addiction treatment business, getting accused of trafficking drugs isn't great. And so I had to get out there and just punch my way through this PR problem. That first week that the news broke, I probably talked to on the phone 500 people, 700 people. I just called everyone, took it head on. What's up? What's up, Chase? Yeah, just calling. I know you saw the news. Want to let you know I'm here, running the shop. I didn't know anything about it. Here's what I do know about it. This is all I know about it. I'm open book. I'll answer any question you have. Gee, Eric, appreciate it. And one by one, it started to turn the tide. That happened in July, mid to late July. And in August, the business had the worst month. Like I thought I was going to lose everything. Like I thought that we were dead. And I got out there, and then on the back of that week, I went out there and just started doing sales and beating, I worked my face off. And by October, we had the best month that we'd ever had. And then I turned around, stacked up a bunch of best months, had a good story that I had turned this thing around, went out, got a different investor. Instead of doing a majority deal, I sold 10% of the business to take a little money off and put it to the side. Then I sold another 10%, and then I sold 18.75%. In total, that was $26 million that I took off. And then eventually I worked with that group that I sold. It was the same group for the 3 transactions. It was probably the most impactful 2 years of my life as far as like high-level business training and education, because I got to work right alongside with them. They were invested in my business, but I was still the CEO. And I learned so much, and we just ramped that thing up. And that's a lot of there's the basic fundamentals of entrepreneurship that got me there, which put me in line with, I'd say, most 8-figure entrepreneurs. It was that couple years that pushed me over the edge, that taught me so much, that gave me the ability to have value to other entrepreneurs now in the coaching space and everything that I do with masterminds and helping other people, because of how impactful that was to me. And then we ended up selling it together jointly. We sold 100% of the business in December of 2021, December 21st of 2021.
And it sounds like the more you attack the problem, the smaller the problem got.
Yeah.
I guess internally in terms of dealing with that. And then you said you do a lot of coaching and then masterminds now. How do you approach that in terms of communicating, dealing with adversity and mental toughness? And you say there's so many people out here that are weak. What are like tools you believe that like you use or that they could use that could help them navigate and get through that? I mean, that's one of them, obviously, that you just said, that you just did through your actions there. But
it's a great question. It really comes down to the fundamental basics. People think that it's much more complex than what it is. It is, what is the structure and the routine? All you have control of is today. And so the only thing that I can actually directly impact is right here, right now. I can't live in the past. I can't live in remorse and regret, and I can't live in the future because I'm not there yet. I can plan and have a good plan, but I won't get to execute on it until the future gets here. And so the only thing that I have control of is today. And so having extreme discipline and having a framework that of a structure of your daily habits in the day-to-day and adhering to them no matter what is really what built mental toughness for me. And then taking that and moving through the problems, taking them head on. People's perspective, right? It's daily habits and it's also perspective. When the problem comes, how do people respond to problems?
They usually do the opposite. They usually run from them.
They run from them. They avoid them. They play the victim card, right? I can't believe I have this problem. Womp, womp. Changing your mindset to it's another challenge to overcome. It's another thing I get to do. Mm-hmm. I get this opportunity. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a bigger problem this time? Yeah. Hell yeah. Let's get it on. And so when I say daily habits, it's your wake up time, it's your workout, it's your diet, it's the basic fundamentals. One of the keys that for me that I believe is foundational for my success is my adherence to what I call and talk about frequently, which is a code of conduct.
I love that.
Principles. Mm-hmm. I believe that respected men are consistent and predictable. And so I have core values is another way of talking about this, that I don't come off of these things for anything. Mm-hmm. And I mean, no matter what the consequence could be, no matter how tempting the personal gain is, I adhere to my code of conduct. I adhere to this rule book that is non-negotiable that I apply to my life. And so when I take those two things and I marry them together, that I have this framework for success, which the foundation of that is sobriety, mm-hmm. right? I don't use drugs and I don't drink. I'm already ahead of everyone. Mm-hmm. I'm already ahead of 90% of people, right? Mm. Like, you're going to go out this weekend and get fat and drink wine or smoke weed or drink beers and watch the game, and I'm sober and on them, right? And then I put in the framework of getting up before everyone else. You can't beat me. Of doing the things that I said I was going to do, right? Mm-hmm. I gave, and this is the principles part, the code of conduct. I said I was going to do all these things. I will never break my word to you, those kids, or him. Mm-hmm. I would rather fucking die before I break my word to any of you. Mm-hmm. But before all of you, I will never fucking break my word to myself, ever. Mm. And so I told myself I was going to do these things. I don't let that mental chatter, like, oh, I'm fucking tired. I was up late last night. I don't feel good. I'm blah, blah, blah. I don't listen to that shit at all. And so waking up with a sober mindset and attacking the day, staying on point, staying in character, keeping my word to myself, having a high level of integrity, having a high level of being an honest operator, earning respect, right? Carrying myself in a manner, all of these things built confidence. People are so fucking entitled that they think that they deserve to be content. They deserve self-confidence. They deserve self-esteem. You earn those fucking things. Mm. You earn them. Mm. They're not God-given gifts. Mm-hmm. The God-given gift is the fucking opportunity. Mm. It's up to you to do the work. Mm. And when you do the work and you do it relentlessly, and you don't break character and you don't break your word to yourself for days, weeks, months, and fucking years, it's compounding interest. And in that, you develop a leather skin. You develop callus. You know what happens when you break your word to yourself, let alone to another human being? It's a chink in your armor. Mm-hmm. And then you do it again, it's a chink in your armor. And you said you were going to wake up, but you were tired, so you fucked it off and you hit the snooze button, then turned your alarm off and slept through it. And you woke up and you're like, I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And you said you were going to lose that 15, 20 pounds. And you said you were going to show up for this person and do this stuff. And you said you were going to do these things. And you constantly, this is what most people do, and this is why they're so weak, is that they constantly negotiate with themselves. They're constantly in this state of well, you know, this happened and I was tired, and they justify this. And if you can't count on you, who the fuck can? And if you can't count on you, how do you expect to have any self-worth, any self-esteem, any pride? How do you expect to be resilient? If you can't withstand the day-to-day challenges of life, when a problem comes, you don't stand a chance. Oh, it's a problem. You couldn't get out of bed on time, bitch. You couldn't fucking do the simple shit that you said you were gonna fucking do. And now this problem fucking shows up, and what, you're gonna fucking master it? No, you're gonna get bulldozered by it. It's all of those things that has built me into someone that candidly is just fucking unstoppable. They fucking sent everything that the universe had at me, and it's still coming. My life is not without problems right now. In fact, I have bigger and more complex problems today as a result of fucking how much I've grown in life and all this stuff than I've ever had. And my stress response is like fucking zero, dude. Like, I'm happy I'm like content. Like, you could put me in the middle of, you ever see that movie Apocalypse Now? Do you remember that movie?
Back in the day, yeah.
It's an old one, dude. It's I encourage anyone. There's this one scene, and if you put it into YouTube, it'll pop up because it's famous, and it's literally me. And it's a good analogy. And it's this guy. He's like the general or whatever he is, and it's, you know, they're on in war on the battlefield, and it's like the enemy is there, and there's bullets whizzing, and there's like trenches, and there's like soldiers. They're hiding behind everything, and they're terrified, and all that stuff. And he's got like his army fatigues on with boots. His shirt is off. He's got a big hat on. He's smoking a cigarette, just standing in the middle of the battlefield,
right where
like
he wants
totally unfazed. And then the scene is, and you can look this up on YouTube, is they come in and they drop napalm. And he says, "You smell that, boys? I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Yeah.
It smells like victory."
Yeah.
But the point is the guy is just like totally unfazed by all of this stuff. And when you go through adversity and you build those internal assets to create someone that's built for war, built for problems, like, you become that one word. It's unstoppable. And people look in the wrong places. They're so lost in how they're going to get there. Like, the fucking answer's right here, brother. Like, you have everything you need. Like, I didn't get a handout. I got sober, fucking homeless. When I got sober, dude, I told you I didn't even have a winter coat. I had 2 pairs of clothes, t-shirts and pairs of pants. I didn't even have a backpack. I carried them in a trash bag. I was staying on my mom's couch until she threw me out. I got a $550 a month apartment that the landlord let me move in with half a month's rent and promised them to pay $100 a month for the first 6 months on the security deposit. It cost me $550 a month for the apartment. It was the rent. It was a 1-bedroom in the middle of the fucking ghetto. The first winter I stayed there, I couldn't afford heat or furniture. I had a busted couch that came with the apartment that they left behind, and I slept on a pile of blankets in the cold. That's where I started. What the fuck is your excuse? You know?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it sounds like having these standards for yourself, it's made your life easier, because simpler, not easier, but simpler, because you don't have the consistent brain energy that goes to, how am I going to handle this? Or what time am I going to wake up today?
That's a very great point. When you have a defined code of conduct and you've made the decision that it is non-negotiable, under any and all circumstances, this doesn't change. It's a filtration device on decisions. The decision comes, it goes through these are my core values, these are my beliefs, these are the things that I'm committed to, and it gives you clear direction on exactly how you're going to handle life, how you're going to handle the situations.
And I also love
simplifies it.
I've been in mental training for a long time, and I've never heard the frame building internal assets. I love that too. I think that's really good. And then you call yourself a business athlete, and I'm guessing within your programs, is that something that you prioritize with your clients in terms of training, and why is that?
Business is hard, right? Business is very difficult. I forget the actual statistic, but the majority of businesses fail in the first 5 years. And so this idea of entrepreneurship that's been glamorized in Instagram, it doesn't actually translate to what business is actually like. You want to start a company and bring it from an idea. Think about this. Think about how actually powerful this is, what entrepreneurs do. They come up with an idea. An idea. Drew, the guy who owns this podcast studio, great guy, I see him at the gym a couple times a week. At one point, he said, I'm going to start a podcast studio. It was just an idea. And then he took that idea and he put it into a plan, and then he took action, executed against the plan, brought an idea into real life, and then not only brought it into real life, it had to perform. It had to make enough money to break out of the red into the black, meaning it had to become profitable for sustainability. A business that doesn't turn a profit can't stay around for long because it's operating at a deficit, right? And then he had to, and then like all entrepreneurs do, like we all have to, we have to sustain that over a period of time, and we have to grow it. That is incredibly challenging and difficult. And if you were going to succeed at that, I think it's like 90-something% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. If you are going to be the minority, you better be a high-performance motherfucker. You better be an athlete. And so when you think about it, I always draw this, where the business athlete thing came from was, I think, in the analogy of the fight game, right? Either MMA or boxing. What does it take to be a champion?
Everything.
I got to be up earlier than you.
Yeah.
I have to out-train you. I have to defeat you mentally. I have to outwork everybody to get on top. And I don't see this any different. I think that business is a competitive combat sport of types, right? We have competition. We have, when you get up, if you own a business, your competition got up and they're trying to kill you. And you're trying to kill them. You're competing for market share, right? Going after each other. Honda and Toyota, Coke and Pepsi, Mac and IBM, I don't know, regular computers, all these competitive businesses. They get up and they compete, and they, so when I think of business, I think that you just have to have entrepreneurship has to have a championship mindset. And in order to be champ, you have to be a high-performance athlete.
And then how do you recharge and restore so you can show up and do that?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Elaborate
I live, I mean, honestly, I am on all the time. One of my guys asked me earlier, we were making content. He said, are you ready? I said, I'm not only ready to make this fucking video, I'm ready to go to World War III, start a new business, get in a fucking fist. I'm ready for everything. I don't give a fuck. Let's go. Like, I'm ready at all times. And so that's developed, for me, I didn't start there. Through repetition of everything that I talked about, through daily discipline, code of conduct, struggling through adversity, making the investment in myself, self-education, all of these things created something over time that, like, I don't really need a lot. Like, I'm up at 5 a.m. I get up, I do my prayer, my meditation, I plug in. Maybe that's the way that I do, right? For me, it's like, I gotta get connected. I gotta get hooked up spiritually first. I eat a little food. I do my morning biohacking shit, right? I take all my pills and shots and all this stuff, trying to live forever. And then I go to the gym and I train hard. And I get an excruciating workout in. And a couple things have happened in that process, which I think are instrumental for giving me the level of energy that I have. I said I was going to do all these things. I said I was getting up at 5. One of the games that I play with myself is not hitting the snooze button, right? That thing goes off. What are you, a bitch that needs a snooze button, or someone that stands up and puts their feet on the floor? And so that alarm goes off. I get up. I said I was going to do these things, and I do all of them. And so when I get up on time, I make my peace with God. I do the things that I said I was going to do. I stay on track with my diet, right? It's a big thing for me. And then I go get that workout, and I train hard. And there's a difference when you train. You can train and go through the motions, and I went to the gym, or you can train.
Yeah. 100%.
And there's a big difference. And I go and when I train, I actually try really hard. And when I've done that, what I've done is on today, I've built momentum. What you put in motion will stay in motion. I've stacked a handful of wins. I've put these things into motion, and the momentum of that carries me through the rest of the day. I already have 4, 5, 6 wins, and it's 7:30 in the morning. I've already done all these things. I've already stacked these wins. So by the time I show up to my first business meeting of the day at 8 a.m., I'm like, let's go.
You got the momentum.
100%. And then I'm on them, all in, firing on all 8 cylinders until 10:45, 11 p.m. And then I typically get about 6.5 hours worth of sleep. And that's my day. And apart from drawing boundaries with my mission to make time for my 2 boys, my 2 sons, like, other than that, I'm on it. And so I don't take Sundays off. I don't watch football. I don't rest. I don't vacation.
Well, you do prayer, and you said you're doing the biohacking stuff in the morning.
100%.
And you're working out. These are all...
That's the formula.
Yeah.
I consider that part of the formula. You know what I mean? It keeps me on my game.
Yeah. And then with the biohacking stuff, is there anything that you've done in the last year or two that's like, wow, this shit really, I feel better?
Dude, all of it. I mean,
I agree.
God damn, biohacking, proper, hormone and peptide and supplement and nutrient stuff under, Dr. D. Shout out Dr. D, my homie.
Here on Tuesday.
Is he?
Yeah, well, he was on our show here on Tuesday.
I saw that. Yeah, actually, no, I'm sorry. I saw that on Instagram. I was with him. He's one of my best friends. I was at dinner with him at Poppy Steak last night.
Yeah.
And so I'm he's my guy. He runs all my stuff, and that just gives you optimal performance. And so for any human being, for sure, but especially human beings of aging men, right? I'm 39 years old, kind of in that sweet spot to get involved in that. God, it's been life changing. Dialed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
That's amazing. And then you go into your day. Could you talk a little bit about what you've seen in your experience kind of creates a high performance team and a high performance culture in business?
Yeah. High performance people produce high performance teams. That's it. High performance people produce high performance teams. And so for any leader that wants to run a high performance company, culture, team, whatever it is, you first have to look at yourself. My friend Wes Watson talks about your weakness is their way out. I love that, right?
Yeah, I love that.
And so if they're looking at you as a leader and you're not high performance, you can't expect anything of anyone else that you don't currently do yourself. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous has a lot of powerful statements in it that translate through all areas of life for people that are not alcoholics. And one of the things that it says is that you can only transmit what you have. And so many people want to be high performance and want to lead high performance teams, but you're not high performance. You're lazy. You have a bad attitude. You gossip. You talk shit. You're fat. You're out of shape. You don't work hard. You leave the office before other people. You show up after they do. Why don't you try being high performance? I love the idea of leaders setting the pace. Don't lead from the back, lead from the front. You want high performance people? You want your people to start showing up earlier to the office? Start showing up earlier. Start making it a thing. Start fucking with them a little bit. Be like, I beat you here, Chase.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah.
Oh, damn, boss beat me again. Man, no one outworks this guy. Chase, you going home already? You going home? Boss, it's 6. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tapped in. Show them your work ethic. Lead by example. It's not just read this book, go to this Tony Robbins seminar, sing fucking Kumbaya, do whatever you're going to do. It's literally just setting the pace. And you set the culture. It comes from you top down. And I think that permeates through the company. because there's a level of authenticity that exists here that you can't hide from. Like, people fucking see you. People think they hide. I want to build a high performance culture. Bitch, you're fucking lazy. What are you talking about? How are you going to build a high performance culture, right? And so, really being who and what you are, being what you're preaching. You know, walking the talk. I can't even talk. Essentially, you know, creating a high performance person that leads other people and sets the example and being their North Star.
Action speaks so loudly, I can't hear your words.
100%. You know, your feet are so fucking loud, I can't hear what your face is saying.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
And round 2 of overtime in this business bonus special today is Super Athlete Radio. We have brought KJ and Maceo back to ask a couple questions with Eric Spofford. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Appreciate it.
So KJ, why don't you start, and what do you got?
So my first question is, what are your success habits?
Consistency and predictability. You know, to talk to, how old are you?
14.
14, and you're 13? 12? Give you a little extra there. My success habits, the foundation of my success is the removal of vices. And what I mean by that is, although I had a checkered past with a lot of drug and alcohol use, that if I had not made a commitment to abstain from all use of drugs and alcohol, that I would have never amassed anything even close to what I have and been able to accomplish since. And so although I could talk all day about all these different habits and things that have worked for me and all of that, my advice for a couple young men on how to stay successful the next 10 years of your life will be trying, they're supposed to be, and avoid vices, avoid substances like drugs and alcohol at all costs. And if you do that, you're already substantially so far ahead of so many people. And then everything else from that is education, information, it's community and connections, right? So you need to continue to learn and continue to explore and always be a student, but also make sure it's what you know is very important, equally as if not more than that, more important is who you know. So continuing to build a network, putting yourself in the right environments, because drugs and alcohol will take you off kilter and they will ruin your life and they will totally prevent any chance you have at success. Hanging out with losers will too. And so make sure you build relationships and maintain them with winners.
Does that make sense? So now don't just worry about what's going to help me, but stay away from stuff that's going to hurt me.
Yeah.
And my second question is, if you had to start from zero, like, how would you decide what you're going to do to, like, build up?
In a business sense?
Yeah.
I would find a persistent problem and then try to fix it.
Okay.
If you can the bigger the problem you can fix for somebody, the more they'll pay you to do it.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Pleasure.
All right, you're up, big guy.
What was your first business and like how did you start it?
My first business, I did a lot of stuff growing up I had my own landscaping company when I was a teenager. I used to go and rake their leaves out of their yard and mow their lawn and do all that stuff. And that honestly taught me a lot. It taught me about sales, you know, knocking on doors and asking the neighborhood if I could, you know, clean up their yard or do whatever it is. So it was probably my first real business.
Knocking on doors.
Yeah.
And then my second question is kind of similar to his, but if you were me, how would you start making money?
Same thing, man. Whatever, like, you got to find a problem and on a local level, right? Like, look in your neighborhood, look around, and like, what can you do that solves a problem for someone else? Like, people, do you like raking leaves? I mean, I don't really have that down here. It's kind of a Northeast thing, but do you like doing yard work and landscaping?
Not really.
Nobody does. And that's why they'll pay you to do it. You see what I'm saying? And so when you're young and you're just starting out, you have to have a lot of humility and just be willing to do whatever to get the experience to make a couple bucks. So what will people pay you to do is the question. You know what I mean? You guys live in Florida?
Yeah.
Hey, go clean people's pools. There's stuff like that. You know what I mean? What can you do for people? We got someone coming by my house now that walks my dog twice or 3 times a day. You know, I don't know what it costs, like $20 a dog walk or something. I got a $40 or $60 a day expense just to walk my French bulldog down the street. You know, so you want to make $40 a day? You come to my house a couple times, take the dog for a walk. That type of stuff. I think it's a great place to start. Teaches you the fundamentals.
Does that make sense? Eric, thank you so much
Pleasure.
for coming on Super Athlete Radio. Home run.
Thank you.